Hi, Bobby Kling from Your Online Genius here. Today I want to take the time to address two of the biggest misconceptions that online entrepreneurs appear to have that really can put their businesses at risk. And these are some of the misconceptions that I hear from talking to online entrepreneurs, but also when I appear on podcasts, I'm often asked by the hosts who have a sense that these are misconceptions, but they clearly are hearing the same thing. The first misconception is that online entrepreneurs think intellectual property doesn't apply to me. I'm not inventing stuff. I'm not selling products. So what does all this intellectual property have to do with me? I mean, this is a fundamental error and a fundamental mistake that a lot of people are making. Because if you're an online entrepreneur, the fact is that your entire business is built on intellectual property. And what do I mean by that? My tagline that I use quite often is your platform is your business. And if you're an online entrepreneur, you immediately know that. What is your business built on? It's built on your content marketing strategy. So what is that? That's your podcast, your blog. Maybe you're putting out YouTube videos. Maybe you're putting out social media on a regular basis, but you're putting content out there that you are trying to give value to the world to attract them to you. All of that, intellectual property. Every last bit of that is intellectual property, and it can be protected if you take the right steps. But then let's look at the next step. The next step on the funnel that you're going to use is what? It's lead magnets. Again, it could be ebooks, it could be courses, it could be checklists, it could be cheat sheets. Go down the list. Every single lead magnet that you could be giving away that I can think of or have ever heard someone talk about, intellectual property. Yep, that's right. So again, the next step, your lead magnet is clearly something that's very important. But now let's talk about the next step. What happens when you give someone that lead magnet? Well, you build an email list. Your email list is intellectual property. Again, some of the most important intellectual property. We've all heard it. I've heard it. Everybody said, hey, your list is your business, and that's your key to making money. But that is intellectual property too. Okay, then let's go to the next step. So after you've got your leads, after you've done that, you start trying to sell to them. Again, the sales process is going to involve a lot of copywriting, a lot of work where you're writing these things. Again, all of that's protected intellectual property. And then let's get to the last step. What are you selling? Most online entrepreneurs these days are selling information products of some sort or another. A course, a book, who knows what else. But if it's an information product, intellectual property. Even if it's not, maybe it's something else, but it still probably has components of intellectual property. Maybe your brand, maybe a trade dress. All of these things are protected. Now, I could go on and give you more and more examples, but I think I've made my point. The fact is that if you are an online entrepreneur, by any reasonable estimate, more than 90% of the value of your business is intellectual property. So I hope I've dispelled that first misconception that so many online entrepreneurs have that they don't need to worry about intellectual property because it doesn't apply to them. The next misconception is just as bad. So a lot of online entrepreneurs don't worry about or think they don't have to worry about intellectual property because they say, hey, if I screw something up today, I can fix it tomorrow. And I get it. I'm an online entrepreneur. I've got a lot on my plate. I understand how having to worry about everything can become overwhelming. But the fact is that you could be making mistakes today that can't be corrected. Now, I know that seems hard to believe, but I'm going to give you two examples. And these are examples of things that I have seen repeatedly. In one case, I had a client or a potential client come to me, and they had this great invention. It was an invention that had all of a sudden, they'd come up with it back in the early 2000s, but it was being implemented in every single smartphone in the world. So all of a sudden, their idea, their invention was blowing up. And the way the law works, they would theoretically be entitled to get some payment, a small payment, but some payment from every single sale of every smartphone. Now, do some math in your head. I don't know how many smartphones are sold at the top of my head, but I'm betting it's hundreds of millions. So even if they're getting pennies on the dollar, it's millions, tens of millions of dollars that they would have been entitled to. But see, there was a problem. back when they were two guys in a garage developing this idea, they had messed up some things fundamentally in how they filed things in their paperwork, etc. And so as a result, what ultimately happened is the court ruled that they didn't own it. Effectively, nobody owned this invention anymore, and it was free for everybody to use. So that's an example of how a screw up at the beginning could cost you your biggest potential asset and source of revenue. So again, a big problem. But let's talk about another problem. So another thing that happens over and over and over again is companies will build, or entrepreneurs will build their brand on a name without checking to make sure that it's not trademarked. Okay, and when you do that, the problem is, let's be honest, I make this joke on just about every podcast where they ask me this question, and I make it because I think I may start a podcast. And I anticipate when I start my podcast, I'm going to have all of 3 listeners, maybe only 2. My mom and my dad for sure, and maybe my wife. It depends on what mood she's in with me at the time. But the point is, I'm not going to be popular. So if I use a name at the outset that is trademarked and I can't use, they're not going to find out about it. I'm not going to hear about it then. What's going to happen is I'm going to start producing value. I'm going to be out there in the world really creating value for people and giving value, giving tons of value, and creating a brand and building my goodwill. And 8 months, a year and a half later, I've produced what? 100, 500, episodes, whatever the number is, and I get to be successful. And I've produced all this, these free lead magnets. I've produced all of these white papers. I've got all of this out there under this name. And then when I'm successful, the trademark holder is going to come and say, knock, knock, knock. No, you can't use that name. That's our name, not your name. And guess what? At that point, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing I could do to help you at that point. You're going to have to change your name. But not only are you going to have to change your name, all of that earlier content, bye-bye. You can't use it anymore unless you rebrand every bit of it. And again, maybe you can do that with white papers, take off logos and names and things like that. But good luck with a podcast. I mean, it's out there. Good luck trying to unring that bell. So these are the kinds of things that can come up, and I could list 100 other things. For example, if you're not taking the right steps to keep your information confidential and it gets out in the world, well, once the cat's out of the bag, the cat's out of the bag. And I can't help you. No one can help you. So again, you need to be thinking about these issues right now, and yesterday and 10 days ago, but definitely now. Because if you're not thinking about these things, you could be making mistakes that could really cause serious problems. And so that's why I'm really on a quest to get online entrepreneurs just like you thinking about these issues and understanding you need to be worrying about intellectual property today, and you need to go and educate yourself and take steps. And if you start doing that, you will be in much better position, and quite honestly, you'll be leaps and bounds above the average entrepreneur who goes through life without worrying about these things and stepping on legal landmines and putting problems in their path for the future. So my advice to you, start looking at it now, start thinking about it now, and start taking steps today to get your intellectual property in order. Thanks.